I never understood how dark this realm was. We did spiritual warfare for all these years, not recognizing it was the battleground to go in and shift.
Welcome into a very special episode of the Under God podcast. My name is Nathan Brown. I'm here with Pastor Stephen Martin. And what makes this one special is we've got a really special guest. That is Texas Representative Nate Schatzline, who's here with us from Tarrant County.
Now he's not just a state rep. He's also
a pastor. We're going to talk about that.
We are.
We're going to get into this.
Kind of an oxymoron.
We're creating a new type of intersectionality here.
Yeah.
Pastors and politicians. Come on. But Nate, it is great to have you with us this evening. And would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and then we'll get into some conversation about all the crazy stuff going on in Austin right now.
And you have got that right. It is crazy in Austin. So I'm a pastor and a politician. Crazy. Never thought that I would go into politics. But like politicians all say that. And I actually mean it. Like I really never thought, not because I wasn't interested in politics, but because I didn't think I could win a political race to get into politics. And so, but married to my college sweetheart. We have 3 amazing kids, 10-year-old Jackson, 7-year-old Anderson, and then my 2-year-old Skylar, who's unequivocally our favorite. It's not even close. And
see, I'll tell you, people always say you shouldn't have a favorite, but here's the reality about parenting. I have 4 kids. I have 4 kids as well. Oh my gosh, that could have been prophetic. I think you have another one. I think there's another one coming somehow.
We heard him preaching about multiplying, and I looked at that picture and I thought to myself, he's not done yet.
And I'll just tell you, you love all your kids the same, but depending on their stage and phase, you like them differently. So I totally agree with that.
I understand how much I love my 3rd, and I just don't want to get a 1 or a 2 again. So I'm just gonna.
I see.
I'm the 3rd.
I'm telling you, God's going to be with you, though. I believe 4. 4 is the number for you. Maybe 6 after 4.
It was crazy. We got into this thing and ran for office, and by God's grace won. And it was super, like truly like miraculous. And now we are. I never understood how dark this realm was. We did spiritual warfare for all these years, not recognizing it was the battleground to go in and shift, really one of the darkest realms I've ever seen. I'm sure entertainment industry is the same, but like this is what God called us to. And it's crazy. And so we're taking ground, shining the light. And it's a family effort. My wife is the most patriotic warrior I've ever met in my life. And she's told me many times, if I end up being a rhino, she's going to run against me. And so,
good.
Which that has never happened, by the way. And she is destined to be the first one. So, but all that said, yeah, we're enjoying it. We're figuring it out as we go. And it is a weird world to be in.
It is. You spent a lot of years in student ministry.
Yeah.
Working with, even with junior high students, probably prepared you for working at the Texas State Capitol.
Oddly enough, I'm more mature in junior high ministry than some of the legislators there. So me and my wife did youth ministry for 10 years. Some was in South Dallas, and a lot of it was in Central California, in Modesto, and it's just literally gangland. I mean, we moved there, and the first day we turned on Netflix, the show Gangland, and it was a gas station down the street from us where a shooting happened, and I realized, oh my gosh, Lord, this is where you called us to. So we worked with at-risk kids for 10 years, and mostly with either drug addiction or foster care or some sort of behavioral issue. And so that was our background, and we just loved it. We loved working with kids and helping them. Never did I think I would be with the elite in a building fighting for policy, but I think it gave us a super unique perspective to be like, no, we're fighting for the most at risk, which is the next generation, as they're being indoctrinated left and right. And used to, it was like indoctrinated by TV or video games or the internet. Now they're getting indoctrinated by teachers.
Right.
They're getting indoctrinated by woke ideologies in their own classroom.
In Texas. And this is what's so crazy to me is I think for listeners, listening or watching this, I think when you think of like a dark capital, you don't think we're in Texas.
Yeah.
You think to ourselves, like, we're like the most MAGA state there is.
Yeah.
And yet you have this darkness in our capital. I was just recently there. And one of the comments I made to you is it was darker. It was one of the darkest places I've ever been.
Yeah.
And yet in that dark place, God's placed you there. And you have a cadre of guys who love the Lord.
Some warriors.
Yeah. And so talk to us a little bit about your work there, kind of what some of the obstacles were. What were you surprised about when you got into it?
So when you think of like jumping in the political realm, I really believed that it was like, really black and white issues. where you'd walk in and be like, oh, that's evil, and oh, that's good. Like, and honestly, just the ignorance in me, I thought, well, people who ran off of something of like, ending the sexualization of kids and being pro-life and being limited government and let's cut taxes and let's religious liberty. The people that bring the heaviest darkness into the building are not the left who believe in crazy radical gender ideology and are just heavily deceived. It's the Republicans who don't believe what they ran off of, and they prostituted the church to get the position, only to abandon their values once they got the position. So that's the darkness I wasn't prepped for. I was not prepared for the Republicans who quite literally have no fear of God, are cheating on their spouses during the session, like vulgar things, like to the point where you're like, oh, got it. This is lawlessness in the building where we create laws. And it's a spirit. Like you walk in and you're like, there's a few spirits that I recognize. And I know this is like super deep, but like we see Moloch and Ishtar, immediately perversion inside of our offices. We see scandals amongst members and lobbyists and staff. And then we see mammon, like greed in Texas is a spirit that has overtaken our capital to the point where it's almost, and it's not impossible because the Lord's going to do a new thing and we're going to reform government, but it feels impossible when you get in, almost like how can I actually give financial freedom for the next generation when every dollar is accounted for by a greedy hand that got a politician into the seat they were in. And if I could diagnose it in one thing, the darkness that we felt was I thought the Lord was calling me to run for office. And the commitment I made to the Lord when he called me was, Lord, if you give me this seat, it'll never be mine. It'll always be yours. This is God's seat. And you put me here so I can't own this seat. I steward it for you. The problem is the majority of the reps that I've met with, they think they got themselves there. And if man put you there, they have a fear of man to take them away from there. So they do everything they can to please man.
Well, let's dig deeper into that because this is your second session. This is your second, your sophomore rep, right? Is that right? Like,
yeah.
Like high school? Yeah. It is a little bit like high school?
So weird. And it feels like high school. The drama, everything, the hallways. It's, yes, I'm a sophomore.
Yeah. Tonight you talked a little bit about that journey. I'd love for you to share to the listeners that you're a pastor. You decide that you're going to run. Maybe go back to that first kind of election and how you got here and what God did. I'd love to hear some more about that.
It was interesting because I went back. So taking it back even further that I didn't have time to share tonight, as a youth pastor in California, I felt this call. I was on a jog trying to keep, away from the dad bod for my wife. And as I was jogging in Central California, it's like perfect weather. Like it's the one thing I missed being here in Texas, but like, I'm jogging and I have my headphones in, I'm listening to worship music. I'm praying for our kids, our youth ministry, our leaders. And as I'm praying, I hear the sound of a baby crying. And I literally thought, I'm on a trail. I thought there's a baby that is on this trail. So I take out my headphones, it's so loud. And I start looking around. I'm out here on this trail, can't find anything. And the noise goes away. I'm like, this is crazy. Like I heard a baby crying. And after searching for a few minutes, I'm like, I'm just insane. Like maybe I didn't hear that. I put it back in and I take off running again, start jogging a mile down the road. I hear the same sound. And that's where I realized, oh, this is internal. I literally realized in that moment, well, the baby's not following me. And I just stopped and I heard the Holy Spirit say to me, that's the sound of a generation that'll be aborted if you don't stand up and fight in the political realm. And I'm just weeping. Like I'm just weeping. Soccer moms are on this trail. They're watching me cry. I look like a crazy California person that's tripping out on drugs on the trail. I run back home. I tell my wife, I was like, I feel like I'm supposed to run for political office. And my wife is like, woman of faith. But like, I've never brought this up to her before, ever. In our nearly 9-10 years of marriage at the time. And she looks me dead in the eyes and said, let's do it. And it was like, what? Like, and she goes, I feel the same thing. Let's do it.
Wow.
And we had just witnessed in California, just total tyranny. And so just horrific things that were happening. They were literally saying that if you won't trans your kid, we're going to take your kids away from you. Like if you want, all the things that you're seeing, that comprehensive sex ed at 5 years old, and our kids weren't old enough. Our kid at the time was not old enough to go to school. And so anyway, I started on this journey and I was like, all right, Lord, I heard you. Now what do I do? So I'm sitting in my office again, praying over my youth leaders. I have a list of all my youth leaders and praying individually, Lord, break through with their lives. And we're just praying over them. And about that time, I felt the Holy Spirit say, go back and get your master's degree in political science. My dad's been in ministry my whole life, and just faithful man of God, just like the real deal, like integrity. I woke up to him praying for me most of the time for me to get my life right, in his room. And just like, it's just really amazing dad, like man's man, taught me, like football coach with me. And he calls me out of the blue as I'm like wrestling internally. And he calls me and says, hey, the Lord told me I have to repent to you. And I was like, okay, what's up? And he goes, the Lord told me I taught you your whole life that you were called into ministry, and I've stunted what the Lord wanted to do with you. You wanted to get your law degree, and I told you you were called into ministry. And he said, I have to repent to you. The Lord says you're called to do both. And he said, I stewarded the priest in you, and I killed the king in you.
Wow.
And it changed something in me as he did it. He goes, go back and get your degree. And I hated school, hated it. And I was like, there's no way. We're having nights where literally 1,000 kids are giving their life to Christ in our youth ministry. God's just moving. I'm like, this is a distraction. This is stupid. And I'm sitting in my office, and I'm praying for this night we have coming up. And I had this moment where I'm reading about Moses, and he's walking by the burning bush. And as he's walking by the burning bush, he stops and he turns. And as I'm reading scriptures, the Lord says, this is a Moses moment. And he said, if you do not stop at the bush and see what I'm doing and sign up for classes today, it wasn't you're cursed. It wasn't you're going to hell. It wasn't any of that. It was, I will choose someone else. Wow. It was today or I choose someone else. And I stopped right there, signed up for classes, Liberty University online to get my master's degree in political science. I've never excelled at school. I struggled in school. Like I didn't like it. Don't like paying attention. Love sports. And I graduated top of my class, summa cum laude, 4.0 with my master's degree in political science. And over the course of 3 years as we built ministry. And so fast forward to 2020, COVID hits, Governor Gavin Mussolini comes in and shuts down our church. And literally says you have a curfew. I was told as a grown man, I can't come out of our condo in California with my children for them to ride their bikes after a certain time at night. And I'm like, this isn't the America that I grew up in. And on top of it, I've just formed all these new political opinions of I'm a stinking American and I'm going to fight for our values and our constitutional rights. And so, I was like, hey, 2020 COVID hit, we got to get out of here. So the Holy Spirit led us to move back to Texas. We moved back to Texas, no political connections. I start interning for a congresswoman at the time. As I'm interning for this congresswoman, she ends up winning by 1%. And I have this opportunity to move to DC and to be a part of what she's doing in DC. And I turn it down because the Lord said Texas. And there's no other doors open. And I'm like, so God, I did all this to literally go intern, be a bagel boy for a congresswoman, have no connections. And here's where, about that time, a friend of mine, Pastor Steve Panate, is running for mayor of Fort Worth at a church down the road at Mercy Culture Church. And he's like, I'm going to run for mayor. And so I meet with him and he's like, hey, look, I just want your advice. I know you have a master's in political science. You're a pastor in another church. And I said, well, what's your campaign look like? And he's like, oh, we're going off a word of the Lord. And I'm like, that's awesome. What's your campaign look like? And he's like, well, and I go, how much money have you raised? Mayor of Fort Worth, largest red city in America. And he was like, well, we're enough. And I go, you need $1 million. And he was like, we're not there. And I go, what's your block walking strategy? Well, we haven't really developed it. We're 65 days out from election at this point. And I was like, dude, do you even have voter data? Do you have anything? And I knew a little bit. I knew enough to know he knew nothing. And he was my friend. And he looked at me and he goes, Nate, I wanted to meet with you. Do you think I can win? And I busted out laughing and I go, no. And he goes, why do I even meet with you? And I go, do you want to win or do you want to make noise for the kingdom? Because I'm on board. Well, if you want to make noise for the kingdom, but we're going to lose so bad. And he busted out laughing. It was a great bonding moment. We've been best friends ever since. And he goes, let's just go make noise for the kingdom. We went from polling him at 1% to getting 4th place out of 10, getting over like almost 10,000 votes, waking up a city. And we just decided like, all right, let's just do this full time. So I left our church that we were at. The pastor that I was with was uncomfortable with how political I was getting because we were running rallies against CRT and against sexualization of kids in Fort Worth. And a lot of churches are uncomfortable being on the front page of newspapers for righteousness. Wow. And so I leave. My wife quits in faith, and she starts a real estate career in the middle of just chaos. And a seat comes open to run for state rep. And I was just like, Lord, like, do you want me to do this? And we're on vacation with my buddy Steve. I looked at him and I was like, hey, he goes, you should run. Because people were calling him to run because he had name ID in the city now. And I was like, no. I was totally running from God on this. I was so tired of everything we'd gone through, moving cross country, everything. And I said, no, but that night the Lord gave me a dream that I ran and won. And I was just like, I woke up the next morning, I was like, man, I had this crazy dream. I ran for this office and won. And he's such a goofball. Steve, he's like, you're a liar, dude. You just say those things. And I'm like, no, I swear I had this dream. The next night I had the same dream again. So I submitted to my pastor, which I think is a spiritual discipline that most politicians don't have. And I said, hey, will you pray about me running? We just started this new organization to raise up men and women of God to run for office called For Liberty and Justice that we're still running today. By the way, our track record as of now of races that we had supported in For Liberty and Justice was 0-1 because we'd only gotten involved in one race and we had gotten destroyed. And so like not a very legit organization. And I submitted to my pastor, and my pastor comes to me and he goes, hey, it's the middle of a Sunday. And that morning I felt like the Lord told me, whatever your pastor says, submit to it. And I was like, okay, I'll run if he wants me to. And if he feels the Lord on it, and I won't if he doesn't. And I really felt like a blessing from that. Like there's a blessing in spiritual covering. Yep. And if I'm truly submitted to my pastor, then I trust that he hears from the Lord. And so I went before him. It was like Sunday, and he sits there, and Steve's sitting on the other side. And he goes, what if I told you that me and the elders, like we prayed and we just feel like you're not ready? We feel like you need some years. You just launched this organization. Like, man, it's just not time. And I just smiled and was like, that's all I needed to hear. I was like, man, I'm fully submitted. Like, no worries. Let's find the right guy. That's awesome. And honestly, I was super relieved. I was like, thank God. I know what it takes to win these races, and I just didn't feel prepared at all. And he goes, man, I was just testing your heart. Felt like I was supposed to see if you were submitted. That's definitely not what we felt. We're completely behind you. Let's do this thing.
And I want to pause there because wow, what an incredible story up to this point. But seeing as you're stepping out, honoring God, I remember going through COVID. There was a pastor that came kind of in front of me, Landon Schott at Mercy Culture. This is so crazy.
And that's
but it's like he had already kind of been going through this journey as well. God had been kind of positioning the church to step into the political realm, which you said in our church today, it's not political, it's spiritual. Yeah. I mean, these battles we're facing today, I think we have this idea, especially as pastors and churches, that there's some kind of like iron wall between, what we do spiritually and then what's happening in the public square. And really over the last 50 years, we've seen how that's worked out. And so God's actually in the middle of doing something in Mercy Culture, Landon Schott. I would love to hear just a little bit more about what you kind of observed happening in the church and in the area. He brought you on to start this ministry. Yeah. Now you're going to be running for state rep, but there was also a foundation there of spiritual community. There's a foundation of really the church coming alive, which quite frankly, we need more of.
So I want to speak to like maybe a more personal side of it, because I've seen the Pastor Landon Schott that's not on Instagram and doesn't have 135 articles from left-wing media written about him. And you get that too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you guys get attacked constantly, which is so great. I mean, look, if you're not working against the enemy, you're working with them.
Well, I always say, Jesus said, "Woe when everyone speaks well of you."
Yeah.
Woe's a bad thing, but it's a bad thing. Meaning you should if you're living for Christ. We tell our church all the time, if you're living your faith and you never experience any pressure or persecution, you're probably not living it like you're supposed to according to the Bible.
Totally. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I walked up. We were really. We went through I can talk about it now because my pastor, Pastor Landon, is really big on honor. So he was like, when I left the church we were at. I had been there for 7 years. And that staff was like family to me. I mean, the worship leader came out of our youth ministry. I mean, we were really church plant. Church is amazing, exploding, people getting saved every week. And when the Lord spoke to us to leave, because quite frankly, and this is no indictment on them, my calling did not fit within the vision of what they wanted to do. And I say that to where I knew that the Lord did not intend for me to raise my sons and my daughter in a church that tolerated their father's calling. They intended to be raised in a church that celebrated it. And there's a lot of pastors out there that love the idea of authority, and they won't get in the mud to actually pastor politicians.
Yeah.
And I just knew I can't be in a place that doesn't water the actual calling that I have in my life. In fact, my calling made it uncomfortable. And I really felt like I was almost being counterintuitive to the mission of the church, to the point where I was like, I'm not submitted. And like, submission's a big thing to me. And so my leaving was more like, hey, I love y'all enough to say, I don't fit. My young adult ministry and when I preach does not match the core values. So we leave. And when we left, man, we were just verbally assassinated on the back end of it, like really assassinated, like told never walk through the church doors again.
Wow.
And it was a hard moment. And it was Landon shot. And
But God had prepared this whole other place that you couldn't see in that moment.
Couldn't see it.
But stepping out in obedience,
And-
true to your call, yeah.
And we didn't know that this was about to happen. But then a few weeks later, we ended up losing a baby.
Wow.
And it was the hardest season of my life. And Landon swooped in and pulled me and my wife in, he and Pastor Heather. And they pulled me in, and this is what I wanted to get to. They said, hey, we want to offer you this job to run for liberty and justice. Because I had done all that at the other church. I'd helped Steve while I was a pastor at another church and just split my time working 60, 80-hour weeks. And he goes, we want you to do this full time. And I was like, I had such a jacked up view of ministry at the time. It was so very much like numbers, fill the room, like programs, whatever it takes, like grow as many small groups, multiply, campus, whatever it took for growth. And very little focused on like the core principles of, are you Sabbathing? Are you resting? Yeah. Are you finding spiritual breakthrough in your own life? Are you spiritually leading in your home? Do your kids love you as much as you love the church? You know? And I was sitting there and I sat there and I was a broken man and I just lost a baby and I was bitter. And I looked at Landon and I said, I never want to pastor again. I never want to pastor again. I'm going to go into politics and never want to pastor again. And I made the switch that I feel like most men that have a king and a priest calling do, where they just kill off the priest so that they can beat the king. I felt it. Like I was like, forget that. And I looked at him and I go, I'm done. And he goes, so 3 things. He goes, I'm going to hire you. He goes, and we're going to take care of you. He goes, 3 rules. He goes, number 1, you never talk about the last church till you're healed. Because I care too much about the culture here for you to infect what we've built. Wow. He said, because your bitterness is visible. And he goes, you're silent on it to the team. And we're going to counsel you out of it with the Holy Spirit. Wow. And he goes, but I can't start this till you forgive them. And I was like,
might be a while.
And I go, I'm not feeling it. And he goes, that's the beauty. You don't need to feel it to do it. Wow. And he's like, but it starts right now. And he said, second thing, he said, no matter what, he goes, you never miss a Sabbath. And I was like, great. And I kind of brushed past it. And he goes, you missed what I said. No matter what, you never miss a Sabbath. And I go, got it. And he goes, when was the last time you Sabbathed? And I was like, do you mean an off day? And he was like, you've been a pastor for this many years? And I was like, look, that's just not been valued in the culture that I'm in. He goes, Nate, and this was so direct. He goes, are you addicted to pornography? And I literally got so defensive. I was like, no, are you kidding me? Like I conquered that when I was 17 years old. I got really defensive because I was like, what a weird question to ask.
Yeah.
And he goes, man, I'm heartbroken that your response is so much stronger to pornography than breaking one of God's 10 commandments.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was just broken. And he goes, you will never miss a Sabbath. He goes, you will never answer my call on the Sabbath. You will rest and you are going to heal. And he goes, and I and the Lord will defend you when the lies come out about you from this other church. And he goes, and you're going to stay that way until you heal. And I was like, I don't know that I could ever pastor again. He goes, we're not even talking about that. He's like, you're coming on the team. We're going to win races, take the kingdom for God, and I'm going to disciple you and help you. And he goes, third thing, he goes, you're going to take a vacation and go get alone with your kids and your wife, and you're going to heal. And we're going to get you healthy so that you can lead well and lead for a long time. And I was like, and what I didn't have like the courage to say to him was we were just so broke. Like I was just like, staycations are great. Sounds good, bud, And he looked at me and he could just tell my hesitation. And he looked at me, he's like, hey, he goes, I think you misunderstood what I said. He goes, there's a blank check in my pocket. Well, and you're going to take that and do whatever you need to fix your family. And he sent me. So that's the Landon shot that no one sees.
See, but here's the thing. This is so connected to everything that God's using you to do today. I didn't even know those pieces of your story. And I remember when I came into the Capitol, it was a really, really dark place. But then when I started talking to you, there's such strength. Mm-hmm. And even as you're gathering other reps around you that are motivated and inspired by that, I know as a pastor and a Christian, I know that the Bible's like, you never rise to the occasion. You always fall to the level of your preparation.
Yeah.
And what I saw in your strength was really a politician that was pastored. And what Landon was doing, even before there was any like wins or any like where we are today, which I want to get there because I want to talk about liberty and justice and what God's doing, in your ministry now, was really the seed of everything to come. He's literally pastoring you. When I look at like state reps, when I look at people, it seems like they get to Austin, and if they've not been pastored, it doesn't really matter what they say on their campaign website. It doesn't matter what promises they make to their church or whatever. That really is the secret, because all hell's going to break loose when you get there. It's a dark place. You've got to be prepared for that. And your pastor, man, God bless him. I mean, that's literally exactly what was needed for you.
I've been on staff now. That was 2021. I've been on staff, and now we're in 2025. 4 years. He has called me consistently, and he has asked one question: how's your daily encounters? How's your Sabbath? It's not results. It's not growth. That's happened, but it's been because he's about the health. So he did that from day one with the team. So when they moved to Fort Worth, he tells the story so much better than I ever could, but he had told God, I never want a senior pastor. He was an evangelist. He just was like, he grew up in it, saw the bad sides of it. He's like, I never want a pastor. And the Lord spoke to him and said, the church won't be yours, it'll be mine. And he takes peace in that of saying, all right, well, if it fails, it's on you, and he's like, that's fine. So they launch off these core principles of our culture, which is daily encounters. Forgiveness is not an option. All these things that we're living out. And by the way, so when we launched for liberty and justice, I took the playbook from mercy culture and the values that healed my family and said, that's how we're going to build a quasi-political organization, knowing it's actually a spiritual one. So when we are discipling politicians now, we'll get into that, when we're discipling them, it's actually the core values that launch the church. And so those core values have healed my family in a way. My kids were going to a place where it was like complaining about going to church to like, it's the only place they want to be because it's a safe haven. To the point where, when they walk through those doors, they know that they're safe. So all that said, he championed the cause with me. It was not like, hey, I want to be your pastor so that I can gain clout from having a future politician. It was, hey, I want to be your pastor so we can take ground together. And I'm going to take bullets for you. And it was just supernatural. So you want me to finish the story?
Yeah, please do.
So we're 3 weeks in to launching for Liberty and Justice. We just had a name. And a cool logo.
It is a very cool logo.
And so we were like, hey, this is all we've got. And we were still building out like the core values, and we're taking from mercy culture and like, all right, well, this works in the church. And my master's degree is in political science, but like the thing about politics is it's learned from experience, just like ministry. You go to Bible college all you want,
Yeah.
but then until you're sitting face to face with a couple that's about to get a divorce,
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry, Bible college just didn't happen.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Might have made it harder to pass term in that moment.
Yeah, it's like, man, my professor really screwed up my perspective on this, you know?
Yeah.
And so ultimately, we were sitting there and we are like, Lord, where do you want us to begin? And we just started getting screaming loud. So right before the opportunity to run came up, we were running rallies in Fort Worth, just trying to get woke out of schools. And that's all we knew to do, was just build coalitions and start doing it. And so the opportunity to run comes. He says, you're supposed to run. I say, okay. So we're building as we go. I have this panic attack on New Year's Eve. So like New Year's Eve comes around, I have raised like almost no money. The race is over in March. I've raised almost no money. I am failing at everything. For Liberty and Justice is not growing. I literally am just striving. And I go to Austin. I shared this tonight, and I'm supposed to meet with all these, people that are supposed to give you money, endorse you. Nobody's giving me money or endorsing me, because every time they ask me what my passion is, I'm like, bring the kingdom of God to the Capitol. It's like, that's not cool for, the small business roundtable.
It ain't so though.
Yeah. And so they're like, man, this guy is not going to win. I think that's really what it was about. It wasn't really that my views were too radical. It's that like, they're like, you're going to lose so bad. And so I was going up against a mayor that was the mayor of the wealthiest city in North Texas and was 60 years old. And I was going against the most popular Fort Worth city councilman that had been in for over 12 years and had an incredible track record.
Wow.
And both of them were just raising bukus of dollars. And all I had was the church. So my pastor comes out on stage and he's like, Landon comes out and he looks at me before stage. He's like, just for the record, like, it's totally illegal for Mercy Culture. Like, we'll lose our tax status if we endorse you as a candidate. And I was like, yeah, oh yeah. Like, for sure. Like, no,
Never been adjudicated, actually, and it is unconstitutional. But yeah, technically, the Johnson Amendment definitely throws shade on churches doing
like, it's not celebrated in the liberal. So anyway, he goes, okay, great. Bring me one of your campaign t-shirts before church. I was like, okay. So I brought him a campaign t-shirt, and he puts it on, and I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm getting behind you. And he walks out on stage with my campaign t-shirt on. And the church is, a little thrown off. And he goes, hey, I don't know if you guys know this. Churches are not supposed to endorse candidates. So I'm out here saying, as a pastor of Mercy Culture Church, Landon Schott, I fully 100% unequivocally endorse Nate Schatzline for state representative in the Texas House. Church goes bananas, jumps up, goes crazy. And he goes, and if the IRS wants to come after us, we're going to send you the video of the sermon at the end. And just goes off about righteousness in government. And so that was the launch of my real campaign. All in all, I'm getting no money. The Lord says, as I'm in Austin, after a defeated day, the Lord tells me, go walk around the Capitol 7 times with your shoes off, or 6 or 7 times with your shoes off, and shout. And I'm like, God, that's weird, even for Austin.
I don't know. I think you're fit right in Austin.
Man, I'm telling you, but you know what it was?
He's weird.
As funny as it is, I actually think it was the Lord breaking insecurity and fear of man off of me.
Wow.
Of being like, dude, you got to be crazy to do this. And like, if you're not going to do this, I can't trust you to do what's right when it hurts. And so I did it, and I shouted and felt nothing. Okay. But I'm praying prayers of bills that would pass 2 years later. And so I go home, Landon picks me up, and he goes, why you look so discouraged? And I was like, because I'm going to lose so bad, like so bad. And it's going to make, honestly, man, you got behind me and Steve. I'm going to lose worse than Steve. I'm going to embarrass you. I'm going to embarrass our church. I mean, it really was like, I really was embarrassed. Like, really, my pride was coming out. I'm going to, this stinks, man. Like, I am going to embarrass this, and I'm going to be seen as a failure. And everything that these people said about me is probably true. I mean, I'm just wallowing, self-pity, just really embarrassing stuff. And he looks at me and he's like, what is success? And I was like, winning. And what I didn't say out there on stage tonight is when he said, no, it's not, I was like, look, no offense, but I've coached Pee Wee football with you and your son and my son. And I know for sure you don't believe what you just said. And he was like, no. He's like, get serious with me. He goes, winning is not success. That's success in man's eyes. Success is obedient to the Lord. Obedience to the Lord. That's it. And he goes, and I can't support you if success is winning to you. And he ended it by saying, I would rather lose every race from now to the end of your life than say that we disobeyed God when he said to do this. And I know the Lord told me to bring you on, and I know you're called to this. And I was like, okay. So fast forward, we faithfully run, knock on 26,000 doors. The Lord provides. Over almost $1 million comes in.
Wow.
We're running. We win by the largest margin in the state for any runoff election. And halfway through that point, what I skipped was I had this moment in the car that Asher, who was with me tonight, Asher Gillespie, my now chief of staff, who's my campaign manager that I was paying pennies. I mean, I don't even know how he ate on the campaign trail. Sometimes I just buy him a meal and be like, brother, we're going to survive. And he was just faithful and left a congressional run to come help me.
Wow.
And as we were on there, I looked at him and I said, man, I feel like the Lord's saying we got to chart every step we take. And I started in my daily encounters in the morning saying, Lord, how do I fundraise today? It was that elementary. And the Lord would say, and the Lord literally instructed me, write 10 names down, call them and ask them to ask for 10 more people. So we start coming up with these campaign strategies. And
God's literally giving you a blueprint for
it's
the
a
future.
blueprint. And I didn't know what we were doing at the time. So we start charting it. And I started saying, here's what I feel like the Lord said that we have to do this week. And we need to do a rally here. And on the final week, let's just randomly, I don't know this guy, but let's just see if Charlie Kirk will come to a rally for me. And like crazy stuff. Like just like, yeah, let's just see.
Why not?
Let's just ask.
Wow.
And so I called the
Well, they're going to say no, right?
I called the one guy that I know knows Charlie Kirk, which is Pastor Russell Johnson in Seattle. And I'm like, hey man, like what can you do? And and we're working it. So Charlie Kirk agrees, gonna do a rally for me. And like the Lord's given us blueprints for fundraising, now for block walking, now for how do we hit 26,000 doors? Okay. Well, Lord, you're going to have to open up a door with that donor in West Texas that I've never met before. That person randomly calls me and gets my number from someone. The Lord's just opening up the doors left and right. Charlie Kirk comes. My opponent's having an event up the hill. 12 people show up. 800 people show up to my rally with Charlie Kirk the day before voting. So like this crazy movement begins. So we have this blueprint. I'm the first victory that For Liberty and Justice sees. And we win. And by the way, I didn't even believe it when we won. It was Asher called me. I'm standing at the polls. I fully expected, even after all that I was just going to get clobbered. Like I just really believed it. And I got a call from Asher and the polls closed. I'm still standing I'd shaken probably 3,000 hands that day, just asking for their vote. And fight, like literally so red meat issues, like we are going to take down the cabal of the Austin Uniparty. If they're not giving me money, let's just expose them to what they are. And so it was like we're going hard. About that time, the polls closed. People are still in line, so they're honoring it. And I get a call for early voting results came in. And I just didn't even want to know. Like I was just like, all right, Lord, we've obeyed. I did my job. Let me die. It's just like, let me just go die. And I get a call from Asher, first person I talked to, and he goes, hey, have you seen the early voting results? And I was like, no. How bad is it? And he goes, so you're in first place. And I was like, bull crap. And he goes, look at your phone. And he texted it to me, and I was blowing them out of the water. And I was like, I'm weeping in this parking lot, weeping. And he's like, you got to get yourself together. There's like 200 people at the church right now. They're waiting for you to give a speech right now. And like, we're getting calls from media, Star Telegram, everyone. You got like, seriously, get yourself together. Like, get up.
He snaps in the campaign manager. He's like, get over here. We're good.
And so I get in my car and I'm overwhelmed with the presence of God. And like, but I'm also dead, like physically dead from knocking on 26,000 doors with me.
That's a few.
And by the way, all of this spiritual warfare is happening in the process. My car's broken down. I'm having to borrow a family car. I don't even have a car and I'm winning elected office. It was nuts. We're about to, approve a $350 billion budget. I don't have a working vehicle. And so I get to the church and I pull in the parking lot and the Holy Spirit said, you told me every day, it'll never be yours. It'll always be mine. He said, and I literally remembered a promise I made to God at the Capitol that I said, if you let me win, I will take the first night of winning. And when all the media is looking at me, I will not give a speech. I will turn on worship music and we will publicly worship you for what you just did. And I walked through the doors and everyone's cheering and I silenced them. And I was like, can someone turn on worship music? We're going to worship this victory in before I say a word about it. And like the media is freaking out. Who's this Christian nationalist that just got elected to the Texas House? And we went before the Lord and just worshiped our hearts out that night and and just said, this is the Lord's. I mean, I think I told the media, this seat is the Lord's, which is like so not popular to say. And so we won and so it was probably a couple months in where Asher was like, I bet. Asher's a little bit smarter than me sometimes. He goes, I bet that blueprint will work for other people.
Wow.
And we were like, I don't know, man. It's such a blur, like everything we had done. And so we went back and
it wasn't for Asher. He was keeping records. He was following along.
On point.
Yeah.
And so what happened was the Lord kind of brought in some relationships. Pastor Daniel, who's on y'all's staff, obviously is related to Attorney General Ken Paxton. His consultant somehow, I didn't call him. He called me in the campaign and was like, man, I feel like I'm just supposed to run your race. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like that too,
Yes, I confirmed that.
It was awesome. And he came in and I pulled him into a call and after we had won. And we made kind of history because like I'm half the age of the other people, the second youngest in the state at the time to be elected to a state office. And I was just like, kind of blown away. And I said, hey, we feel like we're supposed to, I was talking to, his name's Nick, my consultant. He said, I feel like we're supposed to create a blueprint for future people to run in Texas. And he's like, I think it's brilliant. He's like, honestly, you ran one of the best campaigns I've ever seen, grassroots wise. You raised all the money, you did all the stuff. And he's like, I don't know what y'all, this is Nick's words, I don't know what y'all got going on at that church, but that's stinking nuts. So the data comes back, 17% of my voters, which is unheard of, had never voted in an election before. They just went to our church and decided to register to vote. Out of 6,000 people at our church, I guess there's 4,000 at the time, that my church won the race.
Yeah.
Wow. It was the church. So like it was without the church and the other churches that started putting my name on screens. And here was the verbiage they used, Kelly Shackelford's verbiage. We don't endorse this candidate because we don't do that. This person is a friend and family of our church. And by the way, he shares all of our values. The church showed up. Like they just showed up. 17% never voted before in any election. So that was the numbers that got me across the finish line. All that said, we started to do the blueprint. I said, Nick, can you bring the strategy from y'all's company that represents Ted Cruz, represents Attorney General Ken Paxton, and partner with what the Lord gave us and these 100 and some odd scriptures that we feel like backs up the claims that pulled us across the finish line. And it turned into, over the course of a year, something called Campaign University that has led to us getting behind candidates and winning over 92 seats in Tarrant County and Denton County alone.
Wow.
So it's a really long story, but like that's the journey.
Wow.
So
wow. I can't help but think about the 80 million evangelicals in the United States. Statistically, only half of them are registered to vote. And of that half, only half of the half actually vote. Yeah. And I constantly have this thought, we see all of these things going on in our culture. We see all this wickedness coming in. These are obviously not political issues. They're biblical issues. They're moral issues. And we have all of these attacks, and yet we're not tapping in to the answer. We say this all the time. We believe this with all of our heart. The local church is the hope of the world. Yeah. It's not just the hope of the world in our four walls. It's the hope for our families. It's the hope for our communities, our state, our nation. And I love what you're doing with Liberty and Justice. And I want to kind of pivot, and I want you to talk a little bit about this program. It's something that we are wholeheartedly jumping behind. Yeah. We're going to be the newest chapter. I want to be able to, add to it and get behind you, because as a pastor, just to be honest, when I look at, I walked into that Capitol and I saw how you were like a bright light in this incredibly dark place. And even as a pastor, I was a little overwhelmed, like, Lord, what in the world can I do? Like, what's the next step? And I think there definitely are churches that are just like, they're not going to make the round. And you said it today, and this bears out in statistics. The churches that are taking biblical stands in the culture, they're engaging the culture wars like full front. Yep. They are actually the ones growing. The ones that are taking this passive approach aren't, because people follow leaders. People follow shepherds. And so they hear their voice. And so when I think about these 80 million evangelicals, and I have lots of these pastor friends that if given a ministry, if given a blueprint, would absolutely get behind candidates. And I will just say this, just out there, everyone knows I believe it. The Johnson Amendment is completely unconstitutional. It's never actually been challenged in the Supreme Court, and it would lose. It would go down, which is why it's never been challenged.
That's what
I would love to be the first church that goes. I would love to.
It's got to be one of us.
Like, by the way,
I say the same thing.
well, I'm just saying when I literally go, I endorse it, and so do all of you. And if you don't like that, well, I mean, don't let the door hit you where the Lord splits you. I don't know what to tell you, but
yeah, we've
got to back men and women of God who are taking the Spirit, who are taking the gospel into the halls of these dark places. We sit around and we look, and we as believers, as believers, we'll sit around and it's easy for us to say, oh, culture's in decline and Gen Z's the craziest generation ever, while not like actually listening to the Lord and participating. We want God to move in our life. And something I tell our church constantly is a lot of times we're sitting back and we're cursing the darkness, but we're not shining the light. We expect God to move, but without our participation. And what I love about liberty and justice, we've been praying for a while. Even when I went up to the Capitol, I'd kind of heard some things coming out of Mercy Culture. I'd heard about your upset. That was something we knew of. I got to meet you and I'm like, wow, you're the real deal. And trust me, I have had some negative experiences with people who I thought were the real deal, but they hit Austin. They hit Austin, and I realized the problem is exactly what Landon saw when he started to take you under his wing. The problem isn't that they necessarily start off that way or that they necessarily think that way, but if you're not pastored and you hit that level of darkness, there's just no way you're going to make it. That darkness is going to overcome you. But if you have a pastor and a local church community, I mean, you go home to your church family and your church family is behind you, and as much as they're behind you, they're also going to hold you accountable.
Yes. They're
also going to be like, hey man, we sent you there to represent the kingdom, to represent our values. And if you don't, well, in our form of government, well, we can remove you.
By the way, that's not bullying. That's not harassment. That's
not having a target on your back. That's not having a target on your back.
Constitutional republic. Like that's
accountability.
It's accountability. By the way, I would hope that you would let a pastor go if they were quite literally going against the Bible.
Oh, we absolutely would.
So it's like,
if I think you're right.
It's just like, that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
So the way that we partner with churches, which you guys know, but I think is so important, is I have seen a lot of political organizations, and there's some great ones out there, like really great conservative organizations that are doing a great work. I think of Turning Point with Charlie.
Incredible.
I think they had the largest role in Donald Trump's victory. Honestly,
they did.
Like unbelievable. God has such a plan. I love those guys. A lot of organizations, when they go down the faith route, though, my observation as a pastor first was that they were trying to get pastors to be political, and they did that by bringing politicians and being like, hey, pastors, listen to the politicians. We take it from a totally different approach, and that is we want pastors to go and pastor politicians.
Yeah.
So like it's
crucial.
very much like, no. We're raising up warriors out of the church. We're not asking pastors to do something unnatural, because the goal of a pastor.
Well, we're not activists. And that's the big thing. It's like, if you think about pastoring, and you had a successful ministry, there was always somebody trying to get you to be on their cause. There's always.
How many conferences did you get?
Oh my gosh. It's just so many conferences. And it's just like, at the end of the day, you only have so much time and energy. And we're at our best when we're pastoring people in our church. And what I love about liberty and justice is that you are actually taking what we already do and essentially using that energy to prepare people that are much needed in the darkest places, some of the most influential places in our government, from our churches, meaning that you're not asking us to go be somebody that we're not, or to embrace a call that we don't already have. You're just giving us the tools to be able to do that effectively.
We did it really wrong for the first year, and we've learned by doing it the wrong way. So like in many ways, I felt like we were copying people when we started our chapters, or not chapters, when we really just started in Tarrant County. We did it wrong. And what I mean by that is it wasn't evil. It was just such a waste of our time. So we started trying to be the political machine. Like in my mind, I was like, no, the church needs to be the machine. And then I kind of got a little bit convicted where I was like, oh, that's actually like the church's number one goal is to preach the gospel. So like that's actually not our mission, is to go win races. However, I felt like, okay, well, what's the most well-known machines? And it is our party system, whether it's the GOP. The problem is the GOP in many ways is so corrupt. Like,
help us with ours.
Oh gosh, it's like, even at our national level, the NRC, like you just see like the godlessness that's promoted. And I'm like, I get it. I love President Trump. This is no rag on him. But when pro-life is removed from our national party platform for the first time, I'm like, we have an issue.
Yeah.
And so the Holy Spirit,
Which by the way, even he said, he goes, guys, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if I can't get elected, like you have to get to the work. And I look at the church, and this is crazy to me, but Roe v. Wade's overturned and pastors didn't say anything. But these are the same pastors that put a black square on their Instagram or their Facebook. And I'm sitting here thinking in my mind, like, how many millions of children were literally saved and the church didn't even celebrate it?
How many black babies are saved?
Oh, it's just crazy.
Like, that's the thing, right? Like, that's the most marginalized group for abortion.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the genocide that's taken place.
Absolutely.
So ultimately, we came up with four pillars through prayer and fasting. And going after this was, okay, so first and foremost, we are going to establish groups with this. Meaning, if people in your church have a natural inclination to this, we're going to provide the curriculum.
Which is great for the pastor, because so many people are like, man, I'm really passionate about that. It's like, you know what? I got a curriculum that I trust. I know the values are aligned. And it's just like, for the pastor that doesn't know where to start, man, what a great way to start.
Well, the other side is, like, I don't know of a church today that doesn't do some form of groups. And I'm like, why are we adding to this pastor's plate? Why don't we literally give a resource that doesn't take any more weight to be put on a pastor? So groups is the first one. The second one is we are partner with our local GOP. Now, when I say partner, what I really mean is reform. So I felt like it's not our job as the church to be the GOP. It's our job to reform the GOP. And so we get our people that are in groups involved in the local GOP to reform it. So, like, our people don't go in there and say, we're going to just be cogs in the machine. We go in there and we fight for righteousness inside our local GOP. Yeah. By the way, we in Tarrant County have a new GOP chair as a result of passionate people going in that is like an absolute fireball. So fun story that I think is important for this, because it is the heart for liberty and justice. He is kind of raw, and you are a church that goes after the lost, and he's not lost, but he is in process.
Yeah. Well, we all are, but he's early in his process.
He's in process. And so he's an amazing man, and he's overseeing our GOP at our county level, and he's got all these relationships, Jack Posobiec, President Trump. I mean, he's just amazing, and he gets in the most Make America Great Again guy. But he's tweeted some pretty strong things, I should say.
He comes a little hot on Twitter.
It's
X.
It's the platform melted. So, like, so he goes to this other church, and that's fine, because we're kingdom. We're like, hey, we're raising up men and women out of every church in our county. So it's kingdom. And he calls me and he goes, hey, I'm having an issue. My pastor wants to confront me about something I tweeted. I was like, all right, well, that's biblical. Like, that sounds great. And he was like, no, but I think he's like really mad. And I was like, well, I'm just going with humility. And he's like, he showed me the tweet that he put out. And I had already gotten calls from many people about the tweet. So I went about it. And he goes,
you're like, yeah, you really go talk to your pastor.
He goes, talk to your pastor. He goes, do you think this is too intense, this tweet? And I go, oh, yeah.
And you're an intense person, so this has to be.
I was like, too far, on the edge, don't do that. And he was like, oh, man, all right. Well, the problem is, like, it's the truth. And I was like, for sure, just maybe some different words in it need to express that truth.
Start with the truth, but you can work on your tone.
You could say the truth without that word, and that word. And so he was like, all right. So he's like, would you come with me to meet with my pastor? Like, he was concerned. And I was like, okay. So I show up and I watch this pastor, who is a very prominent pastor of a very large mega church in the Metroplex, which there's 1,500 of them. There are what I'm talking about. And he goes, and I sit down, and he doesn't really know who I am because he's not in the political arena at all. And he was like reaming this guy, like talking down to him. Like, that's disgusting. And it really wasn't that bad. I mean, it's crap. Yeah. It wasn't that bad. And he's just like reaming him and just beating him over the head. And I'm just like, like you get that cringe in your spirit,
Yeah.
like, oh, this was a
This is not
pastor
good.
moment, and you're in a spiritual abuse moment.
And I
It's
think
like,
you just ruined that.
and my heart was crying out because I felt the same thing that I felt when I was trapped in a church that did not celebrate my calling.
Mm.
And I felt like, dude, you have the reformer of our county in your church. And rather than saying, hey, let me pull you in so that we can change this, he's very open to it.
Yeah.
You're beating him over the head with it and just accusing. And I just got really mad. And I looked at him, and this is the heart of For Liberty and Justice and pastoring. And I just looked at him and I go, can I just be honest with you? Can we, and like one of our values is we lean into awkward. Like nothing is too far. We're just going to say what is truth. And we don't say what we feel. We say what is truth. And I was like, can I give you an analogy about how this conversation's going? And he was like, sure. And he's like mad, like he's like shaking mad. And like this man is like broken, like has walked through a lot in his life, and he is reforming our county. And he goes, yeah, sure. And I go, so it sounds to me like you in your church have the privilege of having the elite warrior in the culture war in your community. And I said, and it sounds to me like you who've never picked up a sword are critiquing his battle style. And he just stares at me. And I go, you've never been on the fight. And he was like, I've been a pastor. And he starts going, I go, when was the last time you said something controversial in your pulpit? I was like, and I'd done a little research. And I go, I'm pretty sure you didn't even talk about voting during our election last week. And he was like, well, and I go, so spare me the guilt trip.
Yeah.
When you're looking at a man who's fighting in the gender mutilation of minors, and you don't have the guts to stand in your pulpit and say that it's gender mutilation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was heavy. And here's my friend just like, yeah.
He's like, okay, I'm back.
And it was a cool moment. He's like, you know what? We need to fix that. The pastor.
Good.
And I was like, beautiful. That's the heart of For Liberty and Justice, is we are raising up pastors that are in the fight with these people. Yeah. So that first pillar is groups. That second pillar is activism, but it's not the activism like we say. It's reforming the activist circles in your county. We should be leading in them. The third one is our night of actions. So once a quarter, we ask our partner churches to host a night of action, or another church in the county to host one. Here's the beautiful thing. So we didn't want to develop something that was like something monthly, or like, you're not developing a new ministry in the church. It is literally saying, pastor, if you have a midweek or if you have a prayer night, can you dedicate once a quarter to inviting other pastors in the community and politicians to come be interceded and prayed over in that building? And it is quite literally a night, we call it Night of Action because it's where we gather, where we pray, and where we activate the body of Christ to get involved civically, whether we are signing people up to register to vote, and every church has their different culture. So maybe they want to do a Sunday night, or maybe they want to have a Sunday, or maybe they want to do a midweek and it's a totally separate thing that one of the group hosts at the church campus. But we hop to different churches in the community, or it stays at the base church. It's whatever the church wants to do, because we're here to serve the church, not take over the church.
That's good.
So it's like whatever's in your culture, we honor that. And that night is a night of intercession, prayer. And here's the deal. That is the night where we gather every politician who wants to be on that friends and family list, and they are subjected to discipleship. And if you want to be on the friends and family list, you're going to have to prove who you are, and you're going to have to submit to discipleship.
Wow.
And that friends and family list is that fourth tier where we talk about actually raising up men and women of God inside of our churches. And we do Campaign University, which is a free resource that we now give away to churches. And it's a 7-part series where we raise up politicians. But here's what we also do. We train up 4 key members out of those small group settings. And that team grows, but like we just, like any church size can find 4 people that are passionate about politics.
Yeah.
And so those 4 people are empowered. They get on and we train them every 2 weeks, one-on-one, we're pouring into them. And by the way, it's the core values of the organization where we get on a Zoom call, no matter where they are in Texas, or we just launched in Hawaii, we'll be launching in Pennsylvania and in Florida. Like we get on and we pour in. First 30 minutes is spiritual. We are literally checking their heart. Like it is like, how's your Sabbath? It's the questions I got asked. Hey, how's your Sabbath? Are you daily encountering? What's the Lord telling you? Are you following the values? Are you with the Lord? Are you still in this thing? And we pastor them. And then we go through the practicals and we train them on how to run the For Liberty and Justice chapter through our night of actions, through our groups. So you have a night of action leader who puts together the nights, who coordinates. You have a groups leader. Then you have a GOP liaison who's going in and helping run the efforts of reforming the GOP. And then that last one is where we partner with the church and we say, all right, let's pastor the politicians. So in order to develop the friends and family list for that church, we literally have a 35-question questionnaire that has been said by many statewide politicians as the most invasive questionnaire they've ever answered in their entire life, where we talk about their private life, we talk about pornographic addiction, we talk about marriage, we talk about their relationship with their family, we talk about their church involvement. Not just are you a member of a church, do you serve? What does your serving look like? When was the last time you served on a weekend? What does that look like for you? Are you leading a group? Like these are grown men and women that are politicians that are being forced to say, I actually haven't been a member of a church.
Am I a Christian?
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute.
We go into that. Here's my favorite question in the whole questionnaire is, and because I can honestly say there's been seasons of my life where I just would have screwed this question up. But, and by the way, these aren't disqualifiers. They are alerts for us to pastor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, even if they can't
Do you tell them that?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, we're going to determine based off your answers of whether we can get behind you right now on our friends and family list. But like a no today is not a no for the next cycle, but we want to help you get to here. So like we've had members of our friends and family list that we supported their opponent for 2 cycles. And then they literally submitted and we're like, hey, I really want help. And they're now like champion friends and family candidates that we're helping disciple right now in real time.
Wow.
Now, that takes humility from them, and you don't always have that. Sometimes you have bitterness and they don't want anything to do with you, and that's fine. We'll just beat them in the next election cycle. So
that works. Yeah.
But that 35 question, my favorite question is, if your entire constituency wants you to vote one way or wants you to take a stand on one thing, but it goes against your biblical mandate you've been given, do you choose God's side or your voters? And if it's the voters, we can't support you. Because if it's
obedience, it's what your pastor taught you.
If it's the voters, then it's your seat, not God's. And we only support people who are going to give it back to God.
Wow.
So that's the way we empower. And here's the beautiful thing. We don't ask senior pastors, typically not even a pastor on staff, to be the liaison of the chapter. We ask the most passionate volunteers to do the liaison because y'all got too much stuff going on.
Yeah.
So
No, it's great.
I love hearing that. We actually have a couple of people in our church right now running for city council. And as you're talking, I'm like, I need to connect them
yes,
with what you guys are doing, as we're coming on board here pretty late in the game. But I know we've been talking for a while and we'll wrap this soon, but I've got to ask a couple of questions about the current landscape of the Texas State Legislature. So you've said a couple of things that I think maybe inside baseball for people who listen to the podcast on a regular basis. One is referring to the uniparty.
Yeah.
So I want to get you to explain that a little bit, but then in the context of that, I'd love for you to tell us how you see your role in the Texas legislature right now. Like, what has God called Nate Schatzline to do with the seat that he put you in? Tell us more about that.
So when you think Texas, you think like red, conservative, like the bastion of conservatism around America, and it's just simply not the case. I think that is probably the case in Florida. It's probably the case in Arizona in some ways.
It breaks my heart that Florida is further than we are.
It does. And I have such a good friend in the
It's so weird.
I know.
For all the people that have moved from New York to Florida.
I don't get it.
And they still manage to hang on to their values.
Yes, anyway.
It's unbelievable. So
why are we so far behind them?
So, and I'll tell you, so Texas has ridden on its, there's two things. Texas has ridden on its reputation for far too long because what we do well is we are the most pro-business state in America. So on that level of conservatism, what I can say is where we went, we are the most pro-business state. That's why Elon moved here. That's why all these corporations are like, we want to be in Texas. Now, with that comes this mentality that business comes first, not values. And so while other states like Oklahoma have not one county in Oklahoma has gone blue, and like, I don't even remember how many years. Yeah, it's insane.
But they're not very pro-business there, though.
But I'll be honest, like, what's the last Fortune 500 company you're like, oh, we're moving to Tulsa, Like, and maybe they are. I'm the expert on Texas here. So
They are starting to. They're starting to make that.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm from Tulsa. Okay,
Yeah.
so
I got to throw this in. I was just in Oklahoma last week, and I was listening to a business owner.
Broken Bow.
Who broke away? Yeah, this guy, he's talking about Oklahoma politics, and he said, every day I wake up and I just thank God for Mississippi because we're not last in everything. But anyway, keep going. Tell us more about Texas.
So what happened in Texas was, just a brief history, is that we had people who recognized that, number one, Texas was Democrat until about 25 years ago, but it was old school blue dog Democrat, Union Democrat, that was very much pro-business and very much pro-middle class, which is honestly kind of what Trump turned the Republican Party into.
Yeah.
The old blue dog Democrats, of which my grandfather was a part of. He was a union guy in Detroit, and now he's the biggest Trump fan of all time.
Yeah, Ann Richards was governor when I moved here as a kid. Yeah.
Crazy. So then what happened is it started to turn, and Republicans started to gain the traction. And when they did, there was a man by the name of Joe Strauss that ran for Speaker of the House. Now, when he ran for Speaker of the House, this was around the time that we started not just winning elections, but started to get a super majority. Right now, there's 88 Republicans and there's 64 Democrats inside the Texas House.
Allegedly.
Yeah, correct. And or 62, excuse me, that wouldn't add up to 150. And by the way,
your degree is political science. It's not math.
so yeah, that's right. It's where I struggled.
You've got to ask her for that. You got to ask her.
doing it. He's doing new work. And so, do you know that Texas, when we were founded, we have 150 House members because of 150 Psalms, and we have 31 senators because of 31 Proverbs. So that's what we're.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what we're based off of. So that's the number. That's why even though we're growing in population, we don't add any type of representation, and that's why our state senators cover more area than a current U.S. congressman, because they have 1.1 to 1.2 million constituents, and congressman has 700,000 to 1 million. So all that said,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So all that said, that's the history of kind of where we came from. Very biblically based model. When we became Republican, there was a shift in the hearts of the Democrats that said, "Hold on, we're losing. We have to become Republicans." So many of the Democrats that were left-leaning said, we can be pro-business Democrats and run as Republicans, and nothing has to change.
It's a rhino.
And it's a true rhino. And so Joe Strauss led the efforts in this, and he became the speaker as one of the first openly pro-choice, not pro-life Republicans.
Wow.
So it set the tone 12 years ago, when he's the speaker, that he said, hey, I'm a Republican and a conservative, but no Republican policy could pass out of the House. So what would happen is all these Republicans would win, businesses continue to thrive, but we're losing the next generation in our university system, in our high schools, in our junior highs, in our elementary schools, because for decades, we've had a Republican legislature, but they were Democrats running with an R by their name. So this is how we've lost it. Now, the pro-business has been great for the economy, which is why, we have one of the most pro-business tax tax structures within the entire country. That said, what began to happen is the grassroots and the Tea Party came along. That's the Ted Cruz movement that was like, no, we want real conservatives. So conservatives rose up against Joe Strauss. And Joe Strauss, that speaker, was kicked to the curb. In the process of that speaker,
He would not be the last one.
yeah. So that speaker gets kicked to the curb. And what happened was everyone in the legislature that was real conservatives, because we thought it was bad, it wasn't as bad as we thought. What we found out was that there was a small group of Republicans that had switched to R, but were actually Democrats, that sided with the Democrats to elect Joe Straus. So the majority of the Republicans were not electing Joe Straus as Speaker. And the Speaker historically had not had the power in the state of Texas to kill bills, but he took all control. There's a great book that is called Who Rules the Texas House, and it talks about the increasing power of the Speaker and how we are trying to reform it. And so anyway, it's a great book. You should read it. So that said, all of a sudden we're in a position where we remove those betrayers of the party who are actually Democrats, and we have an opportunity to elect a real Republican Speaker for the first time. And when we do that, they elect someone by the name of Dade Phelan, who was admittedly pro-life, okay? Worked for Texas Right to Life. And this is a few sessions before mine. Admittedly pro-life, and that's as far as his conservatism went. So he was admittedly pro-life, but pro-LGBT. He was admittedly pro-life, but didn't want to deal with DEI. He was admittedly pro-life, and he, under the Reagan years, maybe would have been seen in a scenario where the culture war wasn't coming to our front steps because of decades under Democrats, and we've lost the education system. Admittedly, he's like, yeah, that's as far as I go. But he had fooled the legislature. So he gets elected. And let me tell you why that's so important and why we are where we are today is currently, the current data shows that Texas became more red in 2024 with Trump. However, we have all been like, the statement, don't California my Texas.
Sure.
Like, we hate the idea of Californians moving here. I was one of them. But like, we hate the idea of California.
Your wife. Let's take your wife's Texan.
So we hate that idea. The problem is the data actually it shows the opposite. So native-born Texans have turned blue. The refugees from California have kept us red.
Wow.
Because the education system's been run by Democrats posing as Republicans for the last 4 decades.
Makes sense.
The last 3 decades. So we're losing the next generation of native-born Texans, and we're being saved by the influx of refugees from these leftist states.
Don't say we're getting saved by California.
I know.
I just can't wrap my head around that.
So anyway, that takes us to Dade Phelan is the Speaker when I get elected. Dade Phelan spends all this money against me. Dade Phelan won't even talk to me. He's a Republican Speaker. He helped my opponent. He called and threatened my consultant and said, if Nate Schatzline doesn't stop taking money from this conservative group, I'm going to go all in and we're going to keep him from winning. And I responded, because we're kind, but kind of savage, and said, if you want to match the funds they were going to give me, then we can talk. And if not, march you. Keep your money and let's see who comes out on the other side. And he did what he said he was going to do and came after me with all he's got. And when I won by 30 points and crushed his candidate that he had up against me, I expected that we would be able to put things to the side and do it. Fast forward to day one. This speaker has been exposed to be another Democrat. This is 3 years ago. So finally, we've got enough conservatives that we're like, okay, for the first time in Texas, can we get a Speaker of the Texas House that actually matches the state?
Right.
And so my buddy, Tony Tinderholt, decides to buck the system. And so many of the Republicans who were part of the Strauss years that fought to get Strauss out, they're older, 50s, 60s. Some of them like 50s, 60s, and some 70s. Were so tired because they're like, well, he's pro-life, Nate. He's pro-life. And I go, yeah, and they're transing our kids.
Yeah.
And so my buddy Tony Tinderholt in Arlington runs for Speaker. My first session 3 years ago. So not only did I go through all that I did to get into office, on day one, I have to make a vote for Speaker. And that vote is coming down to Tony Tinderholt, one of my close friends, first state rep to ever endorse me, courageous, combat veteran, rough around the edges, love him, knows the Lord now. And he's been a fun one to really live life with and do life with and build our families together. He goes, I'm going to run for Speaker. And I was like, do you think you're going to win? And he was like, no. And I was like, why are you running? And he's like, we got to have a conservative option. And I tried to talk him out of it. And the Holy Spirit hit me and was like, really? The guy who has been saying obedience is success is going to tell this guy, as he's obeying me, not to obey me because he can't win. And I literally felt like the Lord said, so where my principle is to get you in office or to keep you there. And I told Tony, I was like, dude, listen, we got to win. Like I can't start off my career on the worst side of history, like losing. So we get in there and we get into the caucus and you're supposed to take a secret vote. Okay. Secret vote. Now I gave my word to Tony. I was going to commit to endorse him. Dave Phelan would not even meet with me, wouldn't take my calls. His chief of staff said the speaker does not have time to speak to you. I'm a member in his body. He is an equal member as I am. He's supposed to earn my vote. And so I'm like, Lord, and everyone in the building is walking up to me and saying, hey man, like, trust me, like you don't start the session off voting against the speaker. If you do that, your session's ruined. You'll never pass a bill and you're not going to be here for long. And I'm like, but he's not a good guy. And they're like, yeah, I get it. But like, here's the deal. You got to play the game in order to get through this. You got to play the game. And I just kept hearing, you got to play the game, got to play the game, got to play the game, got to play the game. And man, I just didn't get elected to do that. And so I walked up to Tony.
So you got elected with principles.
So
now your principles are being tested.
Yeah. And I said, Tony, I said, what type of speaker are you going to be? And he goes, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to fight for our conservative values. And we're going to turn this state actually red. And I go, you got my vote. I'm committed. And so I committed to him right then. We get into the secret caucus vote. And I'm thinking, come on, man, like just get into a runoff. Like maybe someone else will jump in. Let's get close. So I'm sitting there and we cast our ballots. And typically it's like a 4-round process war. And the caucus chair stands up, 88 Republicans at the time. And he goes, okay, results are in. He goes, 82 votes for Dave Phelan and 6 votes for Tony Tinderholt. The caucus nominee is Dave Phelan. And so I look at Tony and I was like, man, we tried, but at least it's secret. No one will ever know that I was one of the 6. And I used to go in. And Tony was like, I'm taking this thing to the floor. And I was like, you're going to run again? He goes, well, yeah, you're running caucus. And if you lose, we're going to go to the floor and make people publicly say that they want to vote for a rhino or they're going to vote for a conservative. And he goes, I
like this guy.
He goes,
I need to know this guy.
He goes, I think we're going to gain votes. And I go, we are not going to gain any votes. I was like, you just took the fear factor and put it into it because now they have to own it. And I was like, man, I don't know. And he goes, you said you're going to vote for me. And it was my first time my integrity was tested. Where I could have said, yeah, but I meant in caucus. But I knew in my heart I didn't mean in caucus. I just thought he would bail if he lost in caucus. I knew I said I'd vote for him. And so I looked at him and was like, I'm not going to win my next election. I'm not going to pass the bills. Like, I'm going to be in the doghouse all session. So he looks at me and he goes, hey, man. And he's such a good guy. He goes, I don't want to ruin your career. I feel called to do this. I want you to know I love you enough. You don't have to vote for me.
So he lets you off the hook.
He lets me off the hook.
But the Lord doesn't.
And I looked at him and was smiling when he said it. And he was so genuine. Like he really loved me enough that I'm like, I got to freaking vote for this.
You just made it. Yeah. You just made it harder.
Were you a jerk to me? And so I get to the floor on the day of, and I'm dreading it. It's supposed to be the coolest day ever. I'm getting sworn in. Pastor Lan and Heather in there. Steve's up there. My parents are on the floor with us. My kids. I'm holding them in my lap. And the public vote's about to come. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And the night before we're at a caucus meeting, I look at one of the people that have voted for Tony. I'm like, you got Tony's back still, right? And she goes, no, this is a public vote. And I go, well, you know, I'm loyal to a fault. And I feel like, and she goes, hey, you know what your problem is? And I go, what? And this is my first taste of the swamp. She goes, I'm loyal too, but never to a fault. And I just cringed.
Wow.
And that next morning,
disgusting.
I walk to the floor and Tony walks up to me and he goes, hey, here's the deal. He goes, I'm going to run, but like they just told me a rule I didn't know because I've never ran for speaker. You have to have a seconding speech or you can't run. And I was like, who's doing it? And he goes, and I go, I'm not even a member constitutionally yet. And he goes, what a great opportunity for you to get the speech. And I go, I prepared nothing. And he goes, well, obviously you've prepared nothing. We didn't know we were doing this 10 minutes ago. He was like, I just get up there and let her rip, man. You're a pastor. You can do this. And I was like, Tony, I'm not doing it. I was like, brother, let me be clear about my commitment. I committed to vote for you. I did not commit. I didn't commit to commit suicide up there and go make a speech against the current sitting and future speaker that's going to control every bill that comes out of every committee. And he goes, and I go, he already dislikes me. I think he thinks I voted against him, and I'm not sure if he knows. And I'm about to make a public vote for you. And he goes, hey, man, I understand. And he's like, whatever you decide, I respect you. Thanks for taking it with me this far.
But the Lord wouldn't.
And he walks up, and literally, Tony walks up to give his speech with the faith that I was going to second him, with no commitment.
Wow.
And he goes up to give his speech knowing no one might stand with him. And I heard the Holy Spirit's voice in my heart say, are you going to show your kids on this floor what it is to be a coward or what it is to be courageous?
Wow.
And I looked over at my wife.
Holy Spirit's rugged.
You thought you were ready. You thought you were set. You won the election. I mean, good Lord. You're like, you're in the house. And it's like you.
That moment was harder than any part of the election. So I look over at my wife. I look at Adrian and I go, I think I'm going to give a speech. And she goes, I figured that you were. What is the other option? Get up there and give your speech. And I'm like, okay. So I stand up. All these members that I had made friends with are under their breath. Gallery's packed, 800 people. Are being like, sit down. What are you doing? You're throwing away your career. This is nuclear. All the whispers, it is literally like demonic forces are attaching themselves to me as I'm walking the front. I have no clue what I'm going to say. The floor is packed. It's every intimidation you've ever felt in your life. It's like speech class in 6th grade. I've preached 1,000 times. This is nothing like that. The people you're talking to hate your guts. Yeah. And I stand up there and Tony looked at me and he goes, oh, you're going to do it. And I was like, you're giving your speech. You know I'm going to do it. Shut up and don't talk to me. So now, and I stood there and I gave a speech against the current speaker of the Texas House. And I said out loud, I said, Tony Tinderholt is the only choice that is going to fight for the values that I got elected to serve. And I said, with all due respect, Mr. Speaker, and I looked back at him and I go, I applaud you for what you've done for the Second Amendment and for pro-life causes, but it's not enough. And I said, we need someone in this room that is not going to give power back to the minority party that wants to mutilate kids and wants to allow our daughters to have men. And I just go. And the Democrats I'm talking to are looking at me. Like they're in the room on the floor staring at me. One of them, the longest standing one, is in front of me 10 feet, the first space looking at me, glaring into my soul. And I'm shaking. And I give the most just passionate, and I second it, and I let go of the podium, and I walk to my seat, and Tony immediately texts me. He's like, thanks, bud. And I'm like, you killed my career, And I look up, no one cheers, no one applauds. It's silent. The vote comes up, 147-3. And I literally felt like the greatest idiot of all time. And my wife looked over at me and goes, never been more proud to be your wife than this moment right here.
It makes up for all of it, doesn't it?
So this is what we signed up. So for a year and a half, I watched that speaker. Well, let me say it like this. For a year and a half, I watched that vote age better than anything I've ever done in my life, as that speaker allowed the ban on gender mutilation for minors to die 3 times until I burned down a calendar, killing every Democrat bill till they passed it. I watched that speaker lead the sham impeachment of Attorney General Ken Paxton, overthrowing an election just out of personal spite. I watched that speaker kill our border bill that would have sent tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of troops to the southern border to secure it, and end child trafficking during the Biden administration. He allowed for it to happen, and that blood is on those people's hands that allowed it to happen. I watched that speaker hire a White House Obama lawyer to be the parliamentarian because he knew, and a gay activist, that he knew that he would kill every bill that we had in the process of it. I watched that speaker get up and expand Medicaid, do whatever he could to appease the Democrats, empower every Democrat chair to lead committees, empower a BLM activist to be over our criminal justice reform committee. I watched that speaker put a woman with a 100% Planned Parenthood rating in a position to manage our city governments. And I stood there and I prayed every day, Lord, If you have me here only to expose the darkness, then you have me here for a reason.
I would say you also were there to see our great Attorney General Ken Paxton knock that speaker off his pedestal.
Yes, he did.
So there's that too. And
So I'll share this. I know we got to get going. Do we have time for me to share?
okay, we got
We're here.
So it was so funny. I literally, so at this point in session, when Attorney General Ken Paxton is being impeached, I did not know Ken at all. Ken wasn't involved in my race. It wasn't a bad thing. He wasn't involved. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. But I knew Angela because Angela and I joint authored the age verification for pornography bill that took down Pornhub. And they didn't give me credit for that bill. I got all the co-authors. I authored it. I carried it. And on the final day, our current speaker, who is the chair of calendars at the time, Burroughs walks up to me. Yeah, Burroughs walks up to me and he said, "Hey, I want to let you know, I know you've done the work for this bill. You're not getting credit for it. We're putting it in someone else's name so they can pass it." And I said, and I literally
he won't be there long either.
I looked at him and I said, "Do whatever it takes to protect kids. Who cares?" And they passed it. And Angela Paxton is the champion, by the way, of that bill. So she kicked tail and got it done. So at the end of the day, Paxton's about to be impeached. We're about to grow government under this speaker by 40%, making California blush at the amount of spending we do in Texas. We're not fiscally conservative. We're about to expand Medicaid. We're about to do it all. And we're about to, it's so bad. So all the things, and I have identified in the process of all of this, four people so that you can do something that's called challenging the ruling of the chair. So every time this Obama White House lawyer would say, point of order sustained, that conservative bill has to die, the reality is the parliamentarian, who's an Obama White House lawyer, can only give suggestions to the speaker. The speaker has ruling authority. So it's the speaker who has to make the final call. And so our speaker would always fall back on, well, the parliamentarian said, and I would always point out, well, you have final authority, so you're agreeing with the Obama White House lawyer, which he hated when we said that out loud.
For the record.
Yeah, and so we would say it, and what would happen is all you need in the Texas House rules is 10 people that say, I'd like to appeal and challenge the ruling of the chair. And if you sign a piece of paper, you can sign a napkin with 10 signatures. It has to go to a public vote of whether you want the bill to pass or not. And we have a majority of Republicans, so the bill would pass. But the problem is you have to have 10 people who are willing to challenge the leadership. And so when the border bill came up and it was going to send tens of thousands of troops to go secure the border, end human trafficking, end the fentanyl crisis right then and there, regardless of what our federal government wanted us to do under the Biden administration, he sustained a point of order that killed the bill to keep it from being a state jail felony to cross into Texas illegally. And
Jeez.
I looked at him and I go, I like challenge ruling the chair. And that's like nuclear. Like what you're saying is you might as well call for a new speaker, which by the way, I've never voted for him anyway. And so
Everybody knows it.
there were only 3 of us who had done that and I needed 10.
Well,
So I walked up and down the floor. To every person that I knew as a conservative inside, but had no courage. And I'm not kidding. To a degrading level, I begged them. This is to end human trafficking. Will you please buck leadership and sign this piece of paper? Out of 10, I needed 10 signatures. I got 4. Those 4 became my best friends in the world. Those 4 battled with me every
hopefully
day.
some of the others were removed in the next election.
20 of them.
Good. Yeah.
So those 4, fast forward to the Paxton impeachment, it's the end of session, and I had already accepted I'm not passing anything. And my job is to fight for the truth and tell the truth. And I get pulled back into leadership's office. It's like, the mansion. And it's like, oh, Nate, hey, we want to meet with you and we'd like you to come back to the speaker's quarters. I'm like, we had a rule amongst the 4 where you went nowhere without the others because we have to have integrity. And so I grabbed my guys and I was like, let's go. One of them wasn't allowed back there because that was Tony. He ran against Dade. So like we grabbed the other 2. And so we're back there. And one of the top lieutenants of the leadership team under Dade looks at me as like, hey, simple question, Nate. He only wanted to talk to me, but I refused to go anywhere without my guys. And he was like, hey, his exact words, what's it going to take to get you to vote for impeachment? And I said, to overthrow an election of 30 million people. And he was like, the impeachment. I go, but to overthrow an election of 30 million people. And I go, first time in the history of Texas you're talking about? And he's like, what's it going to take? And I said, I really only need one thing. And I realized in that moment, I could get anything I wanted. I could pass every bill that I ever wanted to in that moment if I gave into this corruption. Because if Nate Schatzline voted for impeachment, well, it must be the conservative thing to do. He didn't even vote for the speaker. And his voting record's great. And there must really be corruption in the Paxton family. And I said, why do you need me? And he goes, we need cover. And I said,
yeah, they do.
I said, so anything, I can get anything. And they were like, yes. And I go, man, where do I start? I just want one thing. And they were like, name it. And I go, evidence. and they were like,
that's why God's blessing you, Nate.
And he goes,
100%.
And of course, my other boys, they bust out laughing. And I was like, where's the evidence, guys? And they were like, you have 157 pages of evidence sitting on your desk right now. I go, yeah, I got your hearsay. I said, I've read it, stayed up all night. Family came into town. Haven't spent any time with them. Thanks for that. I was like, that was 157 pages on the same 48-hour period. We're supposed to approve a 350-page budget that's worth $350 billion. By the way, I don't even have a car. The car broke down that week. I'm like, this is insane. God, why do you have me here? And I go, brother, that's not evidence. That's called hearsay. I was like, I'm no lawyer. I'm a pastor. And even I know that. I was like, there's not one evidential document with any of the claims within the 157 pages. I go, I've read it. I've taken notes. I've watched your secret testimony you did. And he goes,
you saw more than Ken Paxton did.
Correct. And I talked to him about
disgusting.
It. And he goes, what else do you want? And I go, I want to cross-examine the witnesses. And he was like, I can't let you do that. And I was like, I don't even need, I was like, honestly, I don't even need to cross-examine them. I'm supposed to operate as a grand jury. And I said, I know you think I'm stupid because I'm just a pastor. I was like, but I know we're supposed to operate as a grand jury right now. I said, I don't have a law degree, but if I don't have access to witnesses, how am I supposed to make a deliberation? And he was like, what are you proposing? I go, there's something, email them some questions to ask. And they were like, no, we're not going to give you access to the witnesses. And I laughed. And I go, how about longer than 48 hours? So I can go talk to Ken myself. And he was like, here's the deal. He goes, we give Ken Paxton longer than 48 hours. He's going to find a way out of this. And I bust out laughing.
So corrupt.
I go, holy crap. You said it out loud.
Yeah.
Like I was like, and about that time, one of my closest friends, Brian Harrison, is sitting there, who's one of the four. And by the way, the four are Tony Tinderholt, Brian Harrison, Steve Toth. They need a lot of credit. They were patriots. And Brian Harrison speaks up and he goes, so I don't really care about any of this. He's like, but I just have like one question. He's like, okay, now Brian Harrison, before he became a state rep, was chief of staff for Health and Human Services under the Trump administration. So like the man is sharp. He's just brilliant, way smarter than me. And he speaks up and he goes, so like these witnesses that gave this testimony, he goes, they were sworn in under oath, right? And it's just silent in the room. And I go, oh God. I'm sorry. Hold on. And I go, I didn't even think to ask that. I go, wait a second. If they weren't sworn in under oath, then I said, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong. I said, but that means that they could go change their story in the Senate and there's no prosecution that could happen to them because they weren't sworn in, so they didn't lie. And he goes, and the guy in leadership goes, here's the deal. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they had to be sworn in. And me and Brian and Steve go, okay, guys, we're going to be a no. You just threw away your entire political career. And we got up and walked out. And when Attorney General Paxton was freed from this because they had no evidence and it was a sham.
Tony Busby did pretty awesome too.
He was great. Same with Mitch Little.
They're amazing.
Who's now a state rep.
That's awesome. Yeah, Mitch was great too.
So Tony was amazing. And so we get through all that, and me and Paxton have no relation. Me and Ken have no relationship at the time, but you better believe we became friends real fast. And so, because I just walked to the back of the mic and all I did was I just asked the same questions I asked in secret
On the
in
record.
public.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was just, I said them nicely. I was like, so theoretically, they could change their story. Theoretically, we're creating precedents. And it just went off of it. And at the end of it, there were 21 of us that stood with Attorney General Ken Paxton, I believe. He's set free, and Attorney General Paxton reaches out to us and asks us to travel the state with him and to flip the seats that these people who impeached him were in. And I was like, heck yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
So God once again
He's driving.
puts you in a position through just a courageous vote, starts this ball rolling where it ends in this incredible thing that happens where, I know it's not where it needs to be yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll
but
give
we're
you-
definitely
okay,
closer
I'll give you the
this
number.
session than last time.
So we get through there. We flip 25 seats. Our attorney general is amazing. Like he's amazing. And he comes in and we get all these new conservative warriors in, and we write something called, can we go from a group of 4 to 25? And we write something called
24.
maybe 24. We'll see. 21 on a good day. So like that, I don't know. It's the pressure is rising. And so the member you're talking about wasn't in the 25.
Okay.
So anyway, so we get
Makes sense.
to, yeah,
It does make sense.
we get into the new session, and I knew we had an opportunity. I was like, we can get Dade out now. Like we have the momentum. We don't have the numbers, we have the momentum. And honestly, it's the rule of 10%. Like if over 10% is upset about something, you can switch the 90 or at least the 60.
Yeah. Can you refresh my memory? Did Dade start drinking on the job before or after the Ken Paxton trial?
On budget night, when we grew government by 30%, the largest in the history of the state of Texas, we were fighting on the side of the floor. Excuse me, it was not budget night. It was right after. We were fighting on the side of the floor. Tons of members were drunk on budget night. And that's a common practice. People get drunk on budget night. So you're approving the budget while you're taking shots in the back hall. So
What a great idea.
yeah. So which by the way,
spending on my property taxes.
I opposed
Great.
proposed a House rule this session at the beginning of this session that said no drinking on House property, and it was killed by our speaker. So all that said, Texas, man.
You're speaker for now.
Yeah, correct. So we get into this situation where we now have these warriors. We write something called the Contract with Texas. It's the 12 reforms that we feel like were put on our heart to change everything. And so we start building a coalition, and we gathered Republicans that were too scared to buck leadership last time and said, look, we came out on the other side of this, the 4 of us, as honestly the most popular amongst the grassroots in Texas out of all state reps in the state of Texas, because we stuck by our principles. Sticking by your principles works. The Lord honors integrity.
Yep.
Join us.
Every time.
We are willing to forget the past and move forward with you and get a better speaker. And they came on board. And so we met together, and we had a total of 48 of us that gathered. Republicans that had the right heart, but maybe didn't have the courage at first, came together and had a secret poll where we stood up 6 members that we thought could win. And we said, it was not the most conservative, because you got to remember, you got to win. So it's like I didn't care about the most conservative. I cared about the most principled. I wanted someone who was honest. Even if he was less conservative than me, I needed a truth teller. I needed someone that didn't stand, on corruption. And we came down to David Cook, who David Cook had made the wrong vote in the Paxton impeachment and had humbled himself and had gone to personally apologize to the Attorney General and owned it.
Yeah, our rep here still hasn't done that. It's a big contention.
Yeah.
And you'll get my support when you apologize.
Yeah. And so ultimately we gathered this group, we get our speaker candidate, we're running, our number gets up to 56. Now, in order to win in caucus, you need 2/3 of the caucus. So we needed 56. We needed 56. We had 52. We're 4 away. And right before we had this caucus meeting, Dustin Burrows announces, I'm running for speaker. And I thought, this is silly. This is insane. We already have 52 members that are committed. We only need 56 out of all the Republicans. There's no way he can win.
Unless.
And the nuclear option is the caucus rule is you cannot seek Democrat support until you win the caucus vote. Now, Tony had broken caucus rules last session to go against the uniparty. So what happened is when we got into this caucus meeting, Dustin Burrows walks in and he was smug and he was super confident and he gives this speech. And it's not a speech of inspiration. It's a speech of, I've already won, get on the team. And I was like, no. This is Dade, but smarter. This is Dade with a new reputation. This is Dade that knows how to work the system more. And so I said, no, we will not. We're going to stand with our word. And he walked across publicly to the Democrat caucus who had just elected Gene Wu, the most far left Democrat caucus leader they've ever had, quite literally a communist. And he met with the Democrat caucus and says, I will make a deal with you. To this day, we don't know the deal. It's playing out in real time.
Obviously, we know the deal.
Yeah.
Vice chairs.
We're finding out now what to do.
Part of it.
Power, rules package.
Part of it. So what happens is he comes back, declares victory in a public thing that night. When they leave, we still have a quorum. Our candidate, David Cook, wins the caucus. And so we have our Republican caucus nominee. He's gone and made a deal with the Democrats. We fight it out all the way till the day of the floor. And here's the encouraging part. So in 2 years, we went from me and Tony and one other and a group of 4 who fought all session to a group of 56 that voted together on the floor. And that's insane gains.
Yeah, it's huge.
However, we had our 12 reforms that our speaker candidate had signed off on, which was what's beautiful. They were going to make Calendars Committee a public hearing where everyone could hear what bills were killed publicly and who killed them. They were going to ban Democrat chairs, actually ban them. They were going to get rid of the Obama White House lawyer parliamentarian. He's still there, by the way. He just works in the back room. It was all these things, incredible policies. We were going to pass our GOP priorities. We were going to ban Chinese, foreign enemies from owning Texas land. We get all the way through, and it's time for the rules package. Dustin Burrows wins the speakership because all the Democrats and 35 Republicans side with him. 56 of us lost on the floor that day, 54 maybe.
Wow.
And the next day's rules package, we come to him and we say, okay. I met with him personally and I said, I hate how you won. And I said, but, and he goes, Nate. And he pulls me in the room, and I've said this publicly now. He's so mad about it. But he pulls me into the room the next day and he goes, I think you are a good member. And I go, okay. And he goes, I want to offer you a seat at the table on my team. This is Burrows. And I was like, okay. Like, I'm just like, what does that mean?
Yeah. I'm all ears.
I was like, I'm curious. Like, what does that mean? He goes, I think you're smart. I was like, great. He's like, I think that people like you. I was like, okay. And he goes, and I think that you have a lot to offer to the Texas legislature. Great, man. What does that mean? And he's like, I want to bring you to the table and I want you to be on the team. And I go, what's the deal? And he goes, you get to be on the team, but you have to be quiet. So the day before, my dad gave me a prophetic word. The day before this meeting happened, day of the speaker vote, he said, the Lord said this session, don't know why I'm supposed to tell you this. The Lord said, you're called to be a trumpet this session.
Wow.
And I walk into that meeting, he said, but you have to be quiet. And I was like,
Well, I'm not going to do that.
and he goes, so I have one question for you. And he said, does Nate Schatzline want to be on the team this year? Does Nate Schatzline want a seat at the table where the decisions are made in the state of Texas? He said, or do you want to be on the outside looking in? As a fighter, he said, and don't get me wrong. He goes, there's a role for the opposition. He goes, you'll always push us to the right. He goes, but I think you're a team guy. I think you're supposed to be at the table with us. He goes, do you want a seat at the table or do you want to be outside in the opposition? And I looked at him and I said, honestly, I've always been kind of an outside looking in kind of guy. And he was like, to be clear, I want you at the table. And I go, yeah, man, I'm not willing to give what you're asking. I'm not being quiet for anybody. And he was like, okay. And he got up and we walked out. We're about to offer all our amendments with our core, our coalition, to make the House rules change, to reform the Texas House. And they get up with one of their chairmen and they call the previous question. And what that means is they end all debate. They unilaterally partner with the Democrats to kill our reforms. And they pass the Democrat Empowerment Act of 2025, which was a rules package that on the outside said we ban Dem chairs. But what it did was it codified that instead of having 8 Democrat chairs like last session, we're going to have 30 Democrat vice chairs because it outlaws Republicans being vice chairs. And oh, by the way, we're going to raise the power of the vice chair to be equal to the chairman. And in the process of all that, we solidified that a larger percentage of the Democrat caucus, the minority party, is chairman now. And we're going to raise the salary of the vice chairman, who are all Democrats, and lower the salary of the Republican chairman in the process. That was shoved down our throats. And when we spoke up, those 30 voted with the Dems to pass it. So we're in long. I know this has been a long podcast, but that's the
People need to know this stuff.
That's
they
where
don't. They don't know.
We're in the war. And just for the record,
And you got a lot of listeners, by the way, in Bell County who have some representatives that
Yeah.
participated in passing that nonsense.
Yes.
So thank you for actually being principled in what
there's
you did.
there's more of us that believe what we believe. There's just not many who have the courage to do the right thing. And what I'll say is, just to end on this note for that piece, where we're at in session right now, so everyone's aware, is the pressure needs to build. So the way we beat Dave Phelan was the grassroots got so loud that 4 of us were able to lead the narrative. Imagine what the mass of us can do if the grassroots gets loud and the church gets loud by simply saying right now, Dustin Burrows is doing something called running out the clock. It's Project Run Out the Clock because they say we ran out of time. So we are on day 72 of a 140-day session. We only have one session.
And who's controlling the calendar?
Controlling the calendar right now is Todd Hunter, who is part of the 35 that partnered with him. Notoriously kills conservative bills, was chair of state affairs last session and kept a lot of good bills off. So Here's the thing. It's day 72. Probably for the first time in recent history, we have not had one bill get to the floor yet. Not one. The Senate has passed, I think, 24 to 40 priority bills for Texas GOP. And we haven't passed one. So that's the update. We're fighting. I believe we're going to win the battle, but that was really long. But
Well, this is necessary conversation. Like I said, people need to know this stuff. And we have been going for a while. Thank you guys for hanging in here. I know if you're listening right now, you're probably on pins and needles because this is some fascinating stuff, but it's really important stuff. With the idea of for liberty and justice, getting the church engaged, training up candidates from inside the house, even, and by the house, I mean the church house.
yes,
Maybe as we start to wrap, could you just share some thoughts for people who are sitting here listening going, I show up to vote. I feel like I vote the right way. I try to vote my values. What's that one next step that people need to take to help get behind guys like you who God has put in the forefront to go and fight these battles against the darkness? What can we do to support you and to backfill some more of these areas that really need to be overturned? We need more than 25 next time around.
100%.
So tell us what to do next, Nate.
So the reality is we really feel like for liberty and justice, our vision is to go to all 254 counties across Texas and then to go to all 50 states. And so we're moving, like we're running. But in the process of that, one of the reasons, and our county judge, his name's Tim O'Hare, he's just awesome. He's such a patriot. He was one of our friends and family list. And by the way, our current Texas GOP chairman, who is over the entire Texas GOP, went through Campaign University and then ran for Texas GOP chair and won. So like he's running it from the top of the GOP, helping us reform it. And he was a Campaign University grad. And so it's just cool. It's cool what God's done. And so ultimately, we're in a position where the reason it's hard for conservatives to win races is because typically conservatives have a family, full-time job, and are dedicated to their church and their community. And so like block walking is just like not top of mind when you're like taking your kids to a football practice. Whereas Democrats typically are less likely to have a job, less likely to have a family, less likely to have consistent hours at their job.
Mostly don't go to church.
They're full-time activists.
Yeah.
They're full-time activists for evil. And so ultimately, we are up against it and we've got to start giving our time and our treasures. So the way that I would say is that if you're interested in getting involved, like whether it's launching a For Liberty and Justice chapter out of your county or joining a current one that we have in their county, we desperately, the cause needs you. And more than anything, I feel like we as believers need it. We need to be in the fight. And the reason we need to be in the fight is because one day I'm going to look at the America I leave my kids, and I want to be able to say it looks more like the Bible than less like the Bible. And that's our mission. It's not getting Republicans elected. It's getting God-fearing men and women elected. And making sure that the church is leading the battle in reform. So I would just say, go to forlibertyandjustice.us, and sign up to launch a chapter or join a current chapter. That's the best way.
I love it.
Man, Nate, that was absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time. First of all, as a pastor, it was incredible having you on our stage teaching God's word. I still think you're a pastor first. I see it in you.
Thank you.
I'm so thankful that there's a pastor shining light in that dark place in the Capitol. We're with you. We're behind you. Thank you for spending so much time with us. And we're going to start a chapter, and we're just going to start doing the work.
Yeah, we're going to start one in Bell County. We're going to start one in Williamson County.
You got those two.
You put a call out. I want to put a call out too as we just close this out. And I want to ask those of you who are listening to this, pray for Nate.
Yeah.
Pray for your rep, whether they're on the right side of things or the wrong side of things. Let's pray and let's ask God. Honestly, these reps that are sending our state in the wrong direction, pray for God to disturb their sleep and disturb their peace until he gets their attention. And for those who have the courage to do the right thing, pray for God to put a wind in their sails and to give them even more fire and more wisdom than ever. And we know that if God is for you, who could be against you? Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the Under God Podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Under God Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and leave us a review. Your support helps us reach more people with our content. You can stay connected with us on Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and Getter. And don't forget to subscribe on Rumble, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify so you never miss an episode. You can also access show notes and other resources on our website at undergodpodcast.com. See you next time, and remember to think biblically about the things that matter most.